Before we begin, I want to be very clear. This video is shared for educational and informational purposes under fair use. Everything you are about to hear is based on publicly available information that I personally reviewed through court records, media coverage, Facebook groups, and YouTube videos related to this case. What I share here reflects my personal opinions and analysis only. Nothing stated should be taken as fact or as an accusation. All individuals mentioned are presumed innocent unless proven otherwise in a court of law. I strongly encourage you to do your own research, review the information yourself, and form your own opinions. Now let's talk about Dawn Pasela. Before we talk about how Dawn passed away, it's important to understand who she was, because that matters. Dawn Pasela grew up in Ohio with her parents, Ed and Karen Pasela, who are still speaking out today about what happened to their daughter. If you've spent any time looking into this case, you've likely seen them on Facebook and in YouTube interviews, still pushing for answers more than a decade later. Parents do not keep fighting like this unless they truly believe something went very wrong. From everything I found, Dawn was intelligent, strong-willed, and deeply curious. She questioned things, not to be difficult, but because she wanted the truth. She studied criminal justice. She worked hard. She believed in fairness. Outside of work, she volunteered quietly, helping children with disabilities and working at food kitchens. People later came forward saying Dawn would buy flowers on her lunch break and give them to strangers she felt needed encouragement. Her own family didn't even know she was doing this until after she passed. In my opinion, Dawn does not fit the picture of someone reckless, unstable, or careless. She was thoughtful, she was intentional, and she was guided by a strong sense of right and wrong. Dawn worked as an office manager for a mortgage fraud task force. At the time, the public narrative was that this task force was protecting neighborhoods and going after fraudsters who caused foreclosures. One of the most high-profile cases involved a real estate businessman named Tony Viola. Prosecutors claimed banks were innocent victims and that people involved in real estate transactions had tricked lenders into approving loans they never should have approved. This is where things start to unravel. According to documents, sworn statements, and later testimony, lenders had actually approved many of these loans themselves, including loans that required no money down. That detail is critical, because if a bank knowingly approved a loan, then the idea that it was tricked becomes very hard to support. That's not a small detail. That's the foundation of the entire case. And in my opinion, when the foundation cracks, everything built on it deserves to be questioned. As the cases moved forward, defense attorneys asked for computers that had been seized during raids. They were told those computers were lost. I stop here because evidence does not simply disappear in high-profile prosecutions, especially when it could help prove innocence. Later sworn statements suggested the computers may not have been lost at all, but destroyed. I'm not stating that as fact, but if true, that is not a simple mistake. That would mean evidence that could change outcomes was removed entirely. Another key figure in this story is Catherine Clover. Clover testified as a government witness in multiple cases while also allegedly being closely involved with the prosecution team. That alone raises concern. Witnesses are supposed to be independent. They are not supposed to sit in on meetings, access information, or influence investigations while also testifying. On top of that, emails later became public showing an undisclosed romantic relationship between Clover and prosecutor Dan Casares. This is not about personal relationships. This is about conflict of interest. If a jury is not told that a key witness has a close personal relationship with the prosecutor handling the case, they are missing information that could affect how testimony is viewed. According to sworn declarations, Dawn was allegedly instructed to wear a recording device and secretly record conversations with a defendant after charges were already filed. She was also allegedly directed to donate money from her own checking account to a legal defense fund, with the understanding she would be reimbursed. I need to pause here and explain why this matters. Once charges are filed, secretly trying to learn defense strategy is no longer about investigating wrongdoing. It becomes about interfering with a person's right to a fair trial. In my opinion, this appears to be the moment Dawn realized she was involved in something she could not stand behind. During a review of loan files, a lender executive reportedly stated that the bank approved the very loans that prosecutors had been calling fraudulent. That moment matters, because if the bank approved them, then fraud may not have existed at all. Dawn reportedly questioned how prosecutions could continue under those circumstances. The alleged response was that she should stay in her place or risk losing her job. To me, that suggests truth was not welcome and silence was expected. After the first federal conviction, Dawn allegedly contacted the defendant and provided documents she believed proved innocence. She admitted her role in recording conversations and agreed to testify as a whistleblower. She was subpoenaed for a second trial. According to sworn statements, this is when things escalated. Dawn was allegedly threatened. She was told she would be prosecuted and sent to prison. Her parents later said she was terrified, shaking, and afraid for her safety. I stop here because people who did nothing wrong usually do not need to be threatened into silence. Fear like that comes from pressure. Dawn left her apartment and stayed with her parents because she did not feel safe. Eventually, she returned to her apartment. Shortly after that, Dawn was found deceased. The official ruling was an alcohol overdose. But this is where the case truly falls apart for many people, and I want to explain why. Later records showed there were 3 cell phones inside Dawn's apartment. One of those phones made an outgoing call hours after Dawn was believed to have passed. Dawn was wearing the same clothes from the day before. Lividity suggested she may have passed earlier than initially reported. The heat in the apartment was turned up high while a window was open. 6 officers responded to a welfare check, yet no ambulance was called. Instead, a mortuary service was contacted. Dawn's computer, which allegedly contained sensitive information, was missing. Any one of these details alone might be explainable. All of them together form a timeline that does not fit neatly with an accidental death. The medical examiner later stated he was not informed that Dawn was a whistleblower or scheduled to testify, and said that information would have mattered to his findings. That is critical. Cause of death decisions rely heavily on context. Leaving out that context can change conclusions entirely. An independent forensic pathologist later reviewed the case and stated that Dawn's death should be classified as undetermined, not accidental. He raised concerns about the lack of clear evidence supporting ingestion, food in the stomach that raised timing questions, signs another person may have been present, and the unexplained outgoing phone call. That is professional medical opinion, not online speculation. Dawn's family brought new evidence to law enforcement and were told the case would be reviewed. At one point, they were led to believe the case would be sent for further investigation, but nothing moved forward. A sheriff's review later noted that no witness interviews were conducted, no area canvass was completed, no surveillance was collected, and the phones were not taken as evidence. That is not how suspicious deaths are typically handled. In my opinion, that failure is a major reason this case refuses to go away. When you step back and look at everything surrounding Dawn Pasela's death, what stands out most is not just one suspicious detail, but the pattern that forms when all of these details are placed side by side. Dawn was not a random person. She was deeply involved in cases that carried serious consequences for powerful people. She had access to information that could expose wrongdoing. She questioned that wrongdoing, she pushed back, and she was preparing to speak publicly about it. In my opinion, when someone becomes a whistleblower, their safety should immediately become a priority. Instead, Dawn was allegedly pressured, threatened, and left fearful. She went into hiding, she returned home, and then she was gone. The timing, the missing evidence, the conflicting medical findings, and the lack of a real investigation all point in the same direction. This was not handled with the seriousness it deserved. After looking at the full picture, this is where I land. In my opinion, Dawn Pasela was a whistleblower who knew too much and did not feel safe. She challenged what she believed was wrong, and she was preparing to speak out. The circumstances surrounding her death, combined with how her case was handled afterward, make it very difficult to believe this was simply an accident that should have been closed without deeper scrutiny. That does not mean we know exactly what happened, but it does mean the questions are real, the concerns are valid, and Dawn deserved far more than she received. If you have a case or a missing person that you would like me to look into, you can email me at a closer look 148@gmail.com. Please like, share, comment, and follow so these videos can reach more people. You can also watch more videos on my TikTok channel. Please go follow there at a Second Look 360. And as always, giving victims the voice they deserve.